So it looks like we have most of our attendees coming in. I don't want to take up too much of everyone's time on this lovely Wednesday. So this is the North Central IPM Center Test in Progress webinar series. My name is Laura Isles. I'm one of the co-directors of the North Central IPM Center. We're one of four regional centers supported by USDA NIFA Crop Protection Pest Management Regional Coordination Program. And our mission is to coordinate IPM across the region. And so we're really happy today to welcome Maya Hayslett and Lynn Campbell to talk about youth pollinator education and action. And during the webinar, you have a Q&A section there at the bottom. Feel free to post any questions in there. And then after you guys are done talking, we'll kind of go through those questions and have any discussion that you might have. So I will let you take it away, Maya and Lynn. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Maya Hayslett, and I do crop science youth education for Iowa State University.
And I'm Lynn Campbell. I do 4-H youth development as an extension education specialist, and I work mostly with developing programs such as this to do some youth outreach. And I happen to be coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin. And I actually just did a program today for our very project that we're talking about. So can't wait to share. It was awesome today.
Awesome. Yes. And so I know we have been leading a working group with the North Central IPM Center, the Youth Pollinator Education and Action working group. And so we were the lead institution here at Iowa State. Lynn and I wrote that grant. And so what we want to do today, tell you a little bit about our working group and what our project was, what we've done, and share some of the great resources that we have available and some of the great reach that we were able to do through this grant provided by the North Central IPM Center. Okay, so for this working group, our big goal with this working group was to increase knowledge about pollinators and action for all pollinator conservation. So that's kind of our big message for this working group. And we're doing this through youth education. So why youth education? Well, one, youth are people, they do things, they are contributing members of society, they're influencers. We know in 4-H, as Linda and I sort of both work in the 4-H space, we know that youth have a history as early adopters of new technologies. And we also know that they have influence on the adults around them. So because of this, we think youth educations have a great potential to disseminate new ideas. And we're always very interested in exposing youth to new career opportunities. And so that's just another great outreach outcome from this project. So with this youth education goal, what we wanted to do on our team was to put together resources that could be used for educators. But more than just make the resources, we wanted to put those resources in the hands of educators. And we'll talk a lot more about how we did that. To train them and to get them actually the supplies, materials, resources to actually do the programs. And Lynn will talk more about this, but we think it's really important if we want to have an impact on pollinators and conservation of pollinators. We think it's really important to have a multi-state effort, and just going one individual group at a time is not going to have as much an impact as if we work in a coordinated way, which was another goal of this project, which is why the North Central IPM working groups fit so perfectly for this idea. And so we had working group members, obviously from Iowa State, also Ohio State, Illinois, in Michigan, Nebraska. And then we also worked really closely with a business called Crown Bees in Washington, and we'll talk more about them, but they're a great, although they're a business, they're a great partner for education and educational resources, and we'll talk a lot more about.
We so appreciate Michigan State, and yeah. they were the house of the regional center when we were writing when we were working on the grant the past 2 years, we actually had an extension, and appreciated all the efforts from those folks.
Yes. And so then I just wanted to point out our working group, which is sort of a variety of all these names are different. Sorry. A lot of extension educators, but then as I mentioned, also the business professionals from Washington. So here at Iowa State, we had Elena Polush, who is a evaluation specialist, and we'll show later in the presentation some of the great work that she did to help us really show the impacts of what we're doing with this program. So it was really amazing to have a evaluation specialist on our team. Randall Cass, who does Bee extension for Iowa State University. Brandy Vanderwall from Nebraska, who is a 4-H extension educator in Nebraska. Chelsea Harbach, who was at Illinois as a agronomy extension person and now is back at Iowa State. Nicole Flowers Kimberly, who is an extension educator in Illinois also, and then Mark Becker, who is a 4-H Illinois 4-H extension specialist. Washington, like I said, those were our Crown Bees collaborators, and they have they do native bees, and so we've worked with them on other projects as well, but they have a great expertise in native bees, in managing native bees, and so they're able to give us some great resources that we would not have had otherwise.
And if I might show, here's some of those resources.
Oh.
We had Lee Federblees today with us, and I'll share a little bit more, but those are the things that we can do that's different when we have partners like Crown Bees and Dave, who is the CEO of that company.
And then in Ohio, Tracy Winters, who's a state 4-H educator, and then in Michigan, Veronica Bolhus, who is also a 4-H extension educator. Okay, so when our working group got together and we first started working, it was important to us to define our educational goals. Yeah, we think it's important that people know about pollinators, right? But what are the key things that we think people really need to know so that they can make informed decisions and get to that action piece of helping conserve pollinators? So these are our educational goals that we put together. Don't be afraid of bees. If any of you have ever done pollinator programs or programs about bees before, especially with little kids, there's many stories of one time I got stung by a bee. So that was an important goal to us. Appreciation and importance of biodiversity and the diversity of bees, which is something that bees is one thing, diversity of pollinators in general. Knowing about pollinator decline and what's negatively impacting pollinators. I think it's important that people know about the process of pollination and how pollinators are involved, because it's great if you can say the word pollination, but a lot of people don't know what that really means. And I think knowing more about the process of pollination is important. Make it fun, increase interest in pollinators, create stewards of the environment, again, getting to that action piece. Knowing the importance of pollinators. And so we really try to make the connections to the economic, personal, community, ecology importance of pollinators, especially for food supply, is something that we focused on. Knowledge of related careers, and then generating action. So we also want people to know what they can do that will actually help with conservation of pollinators. So sorry, brief overview. And so as a result, so those were our goals. And then as a result, what we've done is we have put together a series of lessons for all ages. We also decided it was important to our group to be able to reach youth of in that whole K to 12 range. And so we've put together lesson plans to learn about pollinator biology, importance, and conservation, and making sure that the lessons for each grade align with the next generation science standards. And we've used, and we'll talk more about these two things here. We've used the Monarchs on the Move and the Native Bee Challenge, which are previous curricula that Lynn was the lead on developing those resources.
So when we talk about, why we do things and what we do, we base everything that we develop on the experiential learning model. A word out is that it was developed at Iowa State University, and you'll see this experiential learning model on many state 4-H websites, but it's really doing something, reflecting and applying, and there's components of that. I also work in the K-12 realm. And so I was a science teacher for 19 years and was fortunate to be part of a research grant on how to be a better science teacher. I also now teach in the School of Ed, a master's class for our masters of teachers that are math and science majors going into teaching in a truncated degree program. And so the approach that I use is called the science writing heuristic. It's really making sure that kids read, write, speak, and listen like scientists. And what our goals are is to really make sure that our audiences in 4-H are not just clubs, not just events, but also how can we engage in a K-12 environment and make sure that what we're doing actually matches what needs to happen in a classroom. And that looks like, I just quickly, that looks very much like a traditional web, a traditional lab report, except it's not a verification lab. We want kids writing questions. We want kids developing tests, youth, I should say, and claims and evidence is huge. That's something that we want youth to be able to do, is support their claim with evidence. And then you'll notice the reading is at the end. And so thinking about how we can connect that to our experts. And that's really a key thing that we do too. And then reflecting how have our ideas changed, and hopefully that then translates into action. Next slide, Maya. I don't know if everybody here has actually seen the Next Generation Science Standards. So not every state has adopted them, and each state has adopted them a little bit differently. But I think one thing that we do that's different than perhaps other projects is ensure that what we're doing is linked to the Next Generation Science Standards. And I'll give you a good example. Our partners at Crown Bees have had some really amazing resources, but they really weren't as usable perhaps because they did not link to the standards. And so when we link to the standards, I want you to just take a look here. In 7th grade, we want our students analyzing and interpreting data. 8th grade, we think about human activities. And these are just one standard in each grade level. Middle school, constructing arguments, supporting it by evidence. And so when we develop our projects and programs, we keep these in mind. And so when we go out to a classroom, so for instance, we went to Waukee Apex, it's a large school in Iowa, and we got a compliment. This was perfect for, the program that you delivered was perfect for what our standard was. And so we're really excited about making sure that that's happening. If you haven't seen the Next Generation Science Standard, these are what they look like. And so for educators, K-12 educators, these are daunting. I'm doing the practices, which is really the reading, the what a scientist does or what an engineer does. There's mathematical practices as well. We have the content, which is the orange. We have the cross-cutting concepts. There's cause and effect everywhere. And so we want youth to start experiencing things where they get to actually see this in action and constructing arguments. When we do some of our activities, they have to then defend what they do and why they did it. And that's always part of our conversation in debriefing the activities. And this is what I'm most excited about. I think that, as Maya said, we need to think beyond my very yard, right? And so how can I have a greater impact in Iowa? How can I have a greater impact in the Midwest? How can I have a greater impact in the United States? And so our key partners, and this is Iowa, we had a training at Ryman Gardens, which is a facility on Iowa State campus. We engaged County Extension. We have a partnership with USDA. where I could take monarch butterflies out any time of the year. And I'm looking for ways of continuing that partnership. There may be a change in direction, but I'm working to make sure that we can get these monarch life stage sets out. I did not bring them with me today. My permit to come to Wisconsin was held up a bit, and I decided to go with the native bees. And then I do want to mention, Maya mentioned these two, the Monarchs on the Move and the Native Bee Challenge. These were in partnership with the National 4-H Council. We got a grant to write these, and I can't tell you, there's no way that we would have enough money to do the polished version of this. You know, you can open it up and you can see all sorts of things. National 4-H Council takes care of that. And so we're hoping for funding in the near future, perhaps next year for another IPM grant, to make sure that we can produce that polished version, just like what we have here for our other projects that we work in. Girl Scouts, Prairie Rivers of Iowa. Those are groups that we want to think about how we can engage different audiences in different ways. Prairie Rivers is a nonprofit that focuses on conservation. How can we work together to make all that happen? And then I'll go faster on these other ones. Nebraska, again, was one of our early collaborators. And Maya and I went to Nebraska and helped lead a collaboration. We did an ag teacher training there as well, and look forward to growing those collaborations. Illinois, we went to the 4-H Memorial Camp, which was one of the things that I like most is seeing what other 4-H is in other states. And so being able to experience that camp, we did a Master Gardener training. Maya did that training. And we went to this, she went to this amazing facility at Illinois Central College. And there's always gems out there that you don't even know about, and how can we collaborate? And then K-12 classrooms, again, are key as our clubs are dwindling and in numbers, and we're concerned about that. I think we need to think about how we might need to shift and pivot and have a more K-12 classroom focus. Some states are already doing that, like Tennessee. I'll talk about in a minute. Ohio, we actually almost we were 25 miles from West Virginia, and Maya and I just decided to drive there, right? And it was at Cantor's Cave, again, a wonderful facility. Got to meet with a regional group of educators, and they are probably one of our rock stars for implementation. They're doing a lot of programming this year as a result of the training. Washington and Crown Bees, obviously, our partnership with Dave started with a cold call. I called to find if I can find some tubes for our native bee projects, and it ended up being a friendship, a partnership with Dave Hunter with Crown Bees, and figuring out how we can really figure out where bees are. There's so much to do. That's a mason bee that you're looking at there. Dave and Crown Bees had a partnership with Cornell University, and there's a high school version of Mason Bee Edu that's free to access by anybody, something that we really need to grow in the future. I mentioned Tennessee. This was a recent, so we actually got some extended funding. We didn't get funded for a second year for our project. Again, we're going to apply for that, but there was some funds. And again, thank the Michigan State folks for the foresight to see that we're ready and poised to partner with other states. Nashville or Tennessee was one of those. And and it's all about relationships. So I did a fellowship in Washington, D.C. for a year called the Einstein Fellowship. I have a colleague that was there that's the lead of Nashville Public Schools. And so it's all about building networks. Tennessee State University was a cold call. And Ridley 4-H Camp, we met, there's a grant called the Corteva Pollinator Habitat Ambassador Grant. Tennessee is partnering in that. They attended a training session at the Ignite Summit, a 4-H conference in Washington, D.C. And I went down there and did some collaborating with her. In full disclosure, my niece teaches at Stewart County Schools. So let's start there. And I've changed my tune about how to get people engaged. I want to get people engaged that are ready to engage, and then grow it when others are ready. I've done partnerships at Blue Bank Resort, Reelfoot Lake. That was so cool. It was a lake that was started as a result of an earthquake, and have done trainings there. And then Paris Landing will be a new one. And so again, as you can see, I want to color all of the states and get them a little bit more. And Wisconsin, that's where I'm at right now. I have my models here that Maya mentioned. I have our supplies that we're giving them as a partner. And this is all of the things, $250 worth of stuff that we're giving Wisconsin so that they can implement just what I did today. I can't go to Wisconsin every day, but it sure is fun here. And then again, Michigan is one that kind of got hung up in our funding scenario. And we're hoping to reach out to them. It's really kind of cool because they've got a lot of orchards, a lot of fruit is produced there. Our native bee really fits nicely with thinking about food and the things that we eat and the importance of pollinators for that. So again, we need all states. And so I'd like to figure out ways to color this. And, you know, I've talked with Lene a bit about how can we expand that? And so could it be more integrated best management grants where we have multiple states applying for their own regions? And so my goal, and really I want it to be my capstone of my career, is how can we engage states in a very collective effort to improve pollinator education. And that action piece is the most important piece. I know it's hard to read this, but as you take a look at this, I want you to realize that we have, we didn't create all these things. Many of them we did as part of either the 4-H at home, the AIE challenges. And so 4-H at home was National 4-H Council in response to the COVID. The AIE challenges are funded by Bayer and in collaboration with 4-H Council, National 4-H Council, and Corteva is a pollinator habitat ambassadors. And so it's really true as well, partnering with businesses, partnering with industry to figure out how we do this. And then places like Pheasants Forever, really some cool articles or cool activities with native bee, and not native bee, pollinator free ice cream sundae, pollinator free. And so it's helping to meet curricular goals at every single grade level. And again, we've got these put together. Our next step is really getting them polished in a publishable form to share. We're more than willing to share as is and work with collaborators, but we do have some next steps in mind. I think this is yours. Oh, I was going to talk about monarchs. Okay, sorry. So Monarchs on the Move, this is my baby. This was the very first grant I wrote, $20,000 to write this. I also got, and I'm probably up to, with Maya and my PI and co-PI, we're probably up to about 500,000 in figuring out how we can support not just pollinators, but really conservation efforts. And so Monarchs on the Move was the very first one that we made. I was surprised that I was awarded it and was really changed the trajectory of my career. And I want you to take a look at this. And this is just do something that I might do with kids. I asked what you notice and what you wonder. I actually shared that today with the youth I met with, 47 youth in Wisconsin. And again, we want youth to actually do that data analysis. There's a downward trend. It doesn't always go down. We want them developing some questions. What are the low spots? Why are they low? I'll give you a hint. They're low because it's bad weather. And so not only is the monarch population connected to habitat, but it's also connected to weather, what we can't control. So these are the kind of things that we set kids up for trying to figure out and solve some real life problems. This is what I have access to that probably nobody else in the world has access to. And this is really what I want to get out to other states is monarch eggs going out and kids rearing them. And honestly, one experience can change a youth's life and think about what they want to do differently. Today, I had kids opening up their hands and holding leafcutter bees in their hands. And I can't even tell you the smiles that I have. It just changes everything when these are part of the equation. And so I have a partnership with USDA. This is what we do. The monarch eggs are the little picture to the left. We send out 50 eggs to classrooms, and then the youth rear them in this way. You might say, why are you rearing them in cups? Well, there's a disease called OE. And before COVID, people were like, oh, OE, it's not really a big problem. But it is a big problem because just like just like humans, if we are exposed to COVID, we might get it. Same thing with butterflies. And if a butterfly, if COVID, if OE gets in our colony, we have to euthanize the entire colony. So we work very hard to keep it clean, and we have not had an incident where we've had to do that. So these are the kind of things that we can get out to partners. We actually do activities then. This is called the Very Hungry Caterpillar. And both Maya and I, we struggle with coming up with something for a grade 3 through 8 audience. So this is more of a younger audience. We've all read Hungry Caterpillar. We actually have the youth think about it differently. There's some misconceptions in there, especially the end where it's called a cocoon. And so we think about it differently. Those are the things that might kill a caterpillar. And so we really look into caterpillar survival. Next slide is, I think, the data collection and the scenarios. And so these are scenarios that could be the very best conditions. It could be the very worst conditions. And kids start to see that, oh my gosh, this is impacting that, and that there does need to be some research. Here's an example of that in action. And we really want kids working together, collaborating as well. Land management practices. We want people to understand what they can do. And so if you don't know what you can do, you can't make any decisions to do something differently. And so this is an example of a monarch garden. This is one that I actually planted. And so we get grants that we can actually plant habitat. And so we connect our grants together for actually more maximum impact. And then we want to think about how we manage our land. Here's an example. This is a real city in Iowa. This is by Newton. And I used satellite images. Next picture, next one, Maya. And then we actually have youth use markers and identify where they would install those practices. And so the more colorful the map is, the more impact it is on helping habitat and helping pollinators, whether it be monarchs or native bees. And then the native bee challenge, that's up to you, Maya.
All right. Yeah, so then so we did the monarchs on the move, and then the next year we did the native bee challenge. And our goals with the native bee challenge are, this is one where we're really focusing on the importance of pollinators for the food supply and how pollinators are involved in that. So we start off talking about the diversity of bees. I have to say, this is my favorite program that I have to teach. It's my favorite one that I teach because nobody knows about native bees, and everybody is always so surprised and interested to learn about all the different things that native bees do and how they're different than honeybees. So it's fun. So we talk about the diversity of bees, and then we use these models of flowers to show how the bees are involved in the process of pollination. So we talk about the flower parts. Here you can see these kids are being bees. They have bee spoons and they're collecting pollen and nectar and illustrating in a very hands-on way how the bees are involved in pollination and how that pollination results in the production of fruits and seeds. And how those fruits and seeds are things that we like to eat. So these are the flower examples that we use for that. Cherry flowers, apple flowers, pumpkin, tomato, and prairie. And we talk about the differences in flowers is something that you can add into this as well. Cross-pollination, self-pollination, male and female flowers. And as you see, we have there's pictures of the fruit to emphasize that when that flower gets pollinated, it turns into fruit. And kids are always interested in telling you about their favorite fruits and learning that they need bees for those fruits. And then, so we talk about the process of pollination. And then, like I said, we want to show ways that we can actually have an impact and increase habitat. So we have this map that was designed by Iowa State students, and you can see it shows different kinds of agriculture. And then we ask the youth to add habitat. So looking at native or prairie habitat, flower gardens, vegetable gardens, all as ways to add habitat or bees. And then it's magnetic, and so they stick their little magnets on there to add habitats. This is an example of what they might do. And then they add in the bees and show where the bees would be according to how those bees live and what kind of flowers they like to go to. Yep, there's Lynn has an example there if you can
Example
see.
from today.
They did good. Yeah, so this is it's a very accessible activity. And then we also have provide materials to make native bee nests for those solitary cavity nesting bees, and with all of this in collaboration with Crown Bees, who we mentioned earlier, because they really know the best ways to make these kinds of habitat for the native bees. So working with them has been really great. Forget who's going to do this one. I think it's you.
Oh, Pollinator, well, at other partners. So Pheasants Forever, when we did the 4-H at home, again, we got a grant with National 4-H Council for that. And we got permission from Pheasants Forever to use their resource. And again, we really need to figure out ways to work together, whether it's, Corteva and Bayer, for instance, they're competitors, right? But there should be some things, pollinators should be some things that we work together on. Pheasants Forever was gracious enough to let us use this in this. And it's a really cool activity. We like the ice cream sundae one. They have tacos. They have a pollinator free taco, pollinator free sub, and a pollinator free pizza. The reason why we like the ice cream sundae is because every ingredient requires a pollinator. And so chocolate is pollinated by a fly. What's the name of the fly, Maya?
Chocolate midge.
Thank you. I should remember that.
That's okay.
And so there's elements of each one of these milk based products. Cool Whip, dairy cattle eat alfalfa. And alfalfa is only able to make more alfalfa if it's pollinated and to make seed for more alfalfa plants. And so really important message in this. And it's funny to see, we have a bowl, we ask them to find what they want in their sundae, and then we dump all those things out, and it's very impactful. And then we give them an ice cream sandwich afterwards. So then they get it. And I think they'll remember as well.
Yep. It's great for all ages.
Yep. And we've talked mostly about youth, but this particular activity, when we do this at the state fair, for instance, all the different activities that we do, we do as stations. And so at the state fair, we have a huge campground at our state fair. And so lots of times parents are looking for something for their kids to do. And we end up, kind of capturing them for 45 minutes sometimes. And this was an activity that our parents really loved. And it's a plant ID activity. And it's really cool because we have the plant there, the people can see what it looks like. There's a hint. And I just realized, I'd never realized this before. That's why I kind of stopped. That's a viceroy and not a monarch down there in that bottom one. But again, a hint, butterfly milkweed. And so they can get the names of it, and then they can start to think about, oh, these are plants that I can actually plant at my home, is really the notion of connecting habitats and getting everybody to do something. The thing about bees is a picture book, and Maya found this. And again, this was to address one of our goals is the fear of bees, and really reaching different audiences, and thinking about how young kiddos can think about bees differently. And we really like connecting to literacy. That's another way to get into classrooms as well, is increasing, including children's books, especially. Mason Bee Edu is, again, I mentioned this already, partnership with Crown Bees. They actually worked with the researcher, and I should remember his name, but I don't right off the top of my head. But this is a robust set of lessons that could be done in an advanced biology class, ecology class, really opportunities for different curriculum that's even, this is an example of what that might look like. Most people don't even understand that there are different families of bees. And so, and thinking about the diversity of bees is so important.
Yeah, and I like this because they also have like a lot of opportunities to look at real data from real research, which I think is really valuable. Do this. Yeah, and as part of this, so I work in my unit, I work in Iowa State's integrated pest management unit. And so we wanted to have a lesson that talked a little bit about pest management and how that affects pollinators and how having good pest management strategies can help protect pollinators. So we have a lesson looking at what are pests and what are beneficial insects, looking at the identification of insects and why that's important, and then responsible pesticide use to reduce impacts on pollinators. And there's a picture here of some teenagers with sweep nets, which is one of my favorite things to do, and then identifying the insects. Yeah, I forget. You want to go?
Oh, I don't care. Supporting youth pollinator education. So we've talked about the trainings. And these are the numbers. Actually, Maya crunched these numbers. She should be. And Maya's the PI on the grant. She's done a ton of work with this. So I'm actually gotta give her kudos. She does all the collection. She's the organized, I mean, just the detail person. I'm the, let's do this and we'll figure it out. But we're really excited about the numbers of people that we've reached. So over 100 educators, our youth pollinator programs in collaboration with these folks that we're collaborating with, 4,470 youth and over 400 adults, 60 events, 6 states. And we really want it to grow. And I don't know, anything else you want to share, Maya, on this?
Yeah, I was just, when we started, I think that we had goals in our grant for, how many people we were going to reach. And I'm just really excited about, with this hope that we'll give it to educators and they'll take it and they'll start using it. And so it's just very rewarding to see how the educators have gone out and used the resources and are doing some of this great education, and in a lot of different ways with a lot of different types of audiences. Is just really fun to see. I was excited about how much the ag ed teachers picked it up and used it in their classrooms. So just things like that. Yeah. Just
today, I talked to Jill Jorgensen. So she's my contact in Wisconsin. And we talked about how we want to reach out to Vista, AmeriCorps Vista members that they're going to be training for next year. And I can't come to Wisconsin every time they want me to do a program. And so we really need to I don't really like the notion of train the trainer. I really want to develop those people that are passionate and really can take it and run with it after they've been exposed to it. And that's what we're going to talk about next, I think, is how we do it. And I think that's really the key. And so our feedback has been very positive. Educators are learning things that they didn't know. They're being exposed to lessons that can help them meet their learning goals and standards in their classrooms. And so our educator feedback has really been awesome. And we'd like to share some data with you, I think is next. We actually worked on a retrospective pre and post test, and that was an interesting concept to figure out how we're going to develop this and how we want to actually demonstrate the impact of what we're doing. And we have to give credit to Elena Polish. She is our, we're so lucky to have an evaluation specialist on board with us, because she does things that there's no way we could do. She's a PhD. She is absolutely amazing. And I thank her for all of her work in helping us tell our story.
Look at the.
And so when we look at the data, and I don't want to get into the weeds here, but I just wanted you to see the type of questions we asked. And again, we had to do a before and after. And the things that really stood out were that there was quite a few, or some that said not very knowledgeable about some things. And then if we look at those 2 columns in the after the workshop, it was almost 0 in those. And so we really think that what we're doing is having an impact even on our adults. And so I would argue that This isn't even just for youth. It's our educators that need it and our general public as well. And so I like actually using these things for our general public. Maya, anything you want to add on this slide or this one? Again, in this one, it's the same, it's the same story, that we're moving them to where there is a lot more knowledge. And one of the things that we wanted to emphasize is how we're engaging students differently. We do not want students writing notes. We want students to read, write, speak, and listen like scientists and do opportunities that engage them in that way. And we believe that this helps to prove or demonstrate that we've been successful in that endeavor.
The only other thing I was going to point out is that one of the advantages of having an evaluator was that for being able to do the statistics and show that these are significant differences. So in this last column here, you can just see that these are significant differences that the educators have reported.
So opportunities, we don't want to overpromise, but we have things ready to share if you're willing to work with us in a collaborative approach. It's not polished, it's not finished, and we're not planning on stopping until it does. We'd like to know if you're interested in training. So that QR code there, I did not last night. I got in later than I wanted to. I was going to do some edits on our form. I didn't get that done. But if you click on, if you use your phone, click on that QR code, you'll see a form. And we actually have so many requests, it's hard to track. And so we are looking for ways to make sure that we can meet the needs of all the people that would like to collaborate and ensure that we engage them in the process. And so we're interested in knowing what lessons or activities about pollinators that might be valuable to your group, that you could share that on the form. And if you're interested in collaborating, and you see my contact information there, Maya's contact information there. Again, we want this to grow and look forward to finding ways to make sure that happens.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's our last information there that we had to share.
Thank you both so much. I was trying to get that QR code to work. If one of you have just the link to that form, I could drop it in the chat. That would be awesome too. So if anyone has questions for either Maya or Lynn, go ahead and type that into the Q&A. I guess one question I have, I really love that you have the form and everything. I guess if someone contacts you, what sort of time do they need to have to just, if they're not sure that they want to get started, or everybody's got a lot on their plates, if you think they want to kind of just get started engaging with you in this, is it a lot of time or a little bit of time, or where would you kind of peg it at, I guess?
I would say it depends on what they want to do. So if you want to do the monarch eggs project, and that's a month it takes to go from the egg to the butterfly. We have eggs that are available. It also might take some funds. So right now we don't have funding for that, but we do have an opportunity online where you can purchase the kit and the materials for $30 per classroom group. And so things like that might take a lot. If you want to do a training, that would be something that we'd have to think about planning well in advance. But we're also willing to provide resources for you to look at yourself and see what you might want to do. And so it doesn't always have to be where it's led by us either. Eventually, that's what we want it to be, is where we provide resources and it's put together well enough that the individual can take it and run with it.
Yeah, I think like Lynn said, like it says here on the slide, we're happy to send you what we have to take a look at. So that's no time. That's just however much time you want to look at the materials. And I think we're happy to just have discussions about what are you interested in and what would you like to know more about? And could we put together a training event, depending on what your needs are, what your interest is.
And it could be that you have something that would be valuable for us too. So
That too.
we're also looking for additional partners, additional states, as I've mentioned. I want to color that whole United States in a colorful color.
So it sounds like people, if they're anticipating maybe even just next year, they could get in touch with you now.
Mhm.
The further out, the better. Not like I'd like to do something in a month from now is probably not enough lead time.
We've done crazier things. But
Maybe.
Maya and I have a hard time saying no.
Depends on what it is.
I'll do anything if someone can get my receipts submitted for me. I'll contract out.
Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. What's like kind of like one of the crazier claims, or working with youth? I know I'm very intimidated by youth. I'll just, tell you that, because usually, so what's kind of some of the interesting claims that you hear typically from youth about like pollinators or monarchs when they're doing their kind of science experiments?
Oh gosh.
That's a good question, and I know that there are interesting things that come out.
I think
Yeah.
one of the beneficial things is like, so when we have these, I don't know if you can see these are leaf cutter bees. And so I guess I would say the most impactful is doing something like this. Like, I didn't know that we could get cocoons and we could actually cut them open. So when we have mason bees, that has to be earlier in the spring. We could keep them in the refrigerator, and that's how they kind of operate. If it's cold, they just slow down and do nothing. And if it's warm, they come out and they do their pollination thing. I had no idea we could do that in the very first training we did. We'd never done it before. And Dave led us through that from Crown Bees. And we just took a little scissors, we cut around the cocoon, and out comes the bee. And so today I did it different ways in different groups. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to throw them in this container for one group. And then I kind of saw how they work. Well, at the end, I took the tubes, I opened them up, and the kids were holding native bees in their hand with cocoons, and they were helping the ones out that were stuck. And so I think it's critical that we keep the monarch colony going and our partnership with Dave going. I think those are two things that are, I think the most impactful thing that we have that nobody else has is those two things. And so that, I think, is maybe not the craziest, but it's the most impactful. I talked somebody into holding them that did not want to hold them today. So
I don't know if it's necessarily like crazy or weird, but and I just did a native bee program the other day, but one of the things that often happens, like the kids usually put bees, wasps, like all of those insects together, like they're all a bee. And so I like to start by asking, like, oh, do you know any kinds of bees? And then I invariably get wasp, hornet, yellow, like we're all wasps, but they just keep coming out. So, but it's a good discussion point, and as somebody who's interested in entomology, it's fun for me to kind of unpack what's the same and what's different about bees and wasps and how they're different. And that's always a fun thing to go through the kids with.
And if you don't know anything about the next generation science standards, if you remember back in the day, you did the leaf collection, right? And you identified leaves and you studied phylogeny. There's no phylogeny in the next generation science standards at all anymore. And so I think, what we're finding is that people really don't get it, the different species, the different characteristics that different organisms have for different purposes.
Very good. We had a question, several part question. Wonder if you're sharing the research on a national scale, such as conferences such as the National Science Teachers Association Conference. Will the program be scaled up? Also wondering if you're reaching any tribal schools at this point. So several part question.
National Science Teachers Conference. I'm going to go this year. I would love to present next year at it. And so it's in Kansas City. It should have been a no-brainer, but I don't think we were quite ready to share things yet. We do really would like things a little bit more shored up. But I think what we're hoping to do is to do exactly that. Writing a article for Joe, our extension journal. And then Maya just had a really awesome idea recently. You can share, Maya.
Oh, well, I haven't done it yet, but I am currently planning to attend the ESA, I'll say Entomological Society of America meeting, and try to share some of this work that we have done. And then we're also looking at writing because we have all of that great data that Elena has done, writing a journal article for extension, an extension journal. So yeah, so we are looking, that's a great, thanks for asking about that. We are looking at some ways to try to share this out more broadly. And then Len, I think you had worked with had you worked with tribal?
Yeah, well, and
organizations?
Really, really, there was something serendipitous that happened. So we went to, I'm an official collaborator with USDA. And so I can be in all of our facilities on campus without any problem. I don't have to sign in. I don't have to do those things. And we were scheduled to go out to Washington, D.C. with 9 youth. And I actually like to meet with our legislators. We have to help our legislators understand. And I recently went to the Iowa legislature and shared. We met with Chuck Grassley. And then during one of our Dr. Sana Bag was making a visit to Ames, to the USDA facility there. And she actually saw Keith. Keith Bidney is the insect rearing specialist that I work with. And he had a display out and he talked about what we do with 4-H, and Dr. Begg shared that when she was saying her remarks. And then that opened up an opportunity for me to ask a question about 4-H and 4-H engagement and youth, and how we can think about funding and supporting more 4-H programming. And that actually led to a visit. I got to actually visit with Dr. Sanabag, the assistant or the deputy undersecretary, and Izzy Hill, who is the research REE, research education and economics. I think I said it in a different order. So she's in charge of research on pollinators at USDA, and they actually got appropriated for something this year. We don't always get appropriated for things when we work out there. And I did a fellowship in Washington, D.C. So I kind of get how everything works. And so really building those collaborations and doing that. When I was out there, I got invited to come back out, and I actually got to the native bee lab. I'm going to develop something for that, but there's amazing pictures of native bees. And it happens at this native bee lab at Beltsville. And so I got to go out there for a training, and there's something we're trying to develop is how to collect pollen. And you can get $1,000 for collecting 10 grams of pollen, 10 ounces of pollen, which is actually a lot. But thinking about ways that we can collaborate and get USDA involved as well. One of our people from Iowa State, the director of the Seed Science Center, an amazing person, has just been recently named the lead at NIFA. And, how can things that he knows about what's happening here potentially impact growth and opportunities. And so it's all about connections, and it's all about finding people that want to do this work and how can we work together. That USDA collaboration did involve some tribal organizations, and we will be partnering with North Dakota, and that was some of our funding extension as well. And I think it's Washington in collaborating with some folks there, actually in New York too. Was really kind of interesting. And so the USDA is interested in partnering with those groups as well. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, very good.
There's a lot of questions.
But it sounds like you're very interested in any partnerships, and so if anyone on the call today or watching the video afterwards, I did share the links to the Monarchs on the Move, and so that has your contact information plus the form that we'll make sure we include with it, so that, yeah, it sounds like just get in touch, and then once you start talking, you can take it from there.
Well, and I don't think we can thank the North Central IPM Center enough for your support. So it was an opportunity for us to really pull things together in a way that we otherwise could not have done. And so it's, we look forward to future partnerships. We're going to apply for another grant again. And so really want this to be something that's useful to everybody and our partners in the North Central IPM. And again, like I mentioned earlier, figuring out ways to perhaps submit similar grants in all 4 of the centers so that we can coordinate our efforts. Might be a way to do some things too. So looking forward to thinking about ways to connect everyone.
Yep. Yeah, if people don't know, I think all of the regional IPM centers have made pollinator and pollinator health one of our focal missions. It's so important. And
yeah,
you're one of the main, I think, one of the main groups working with youth. And I just love your connection to the next generation science standards and how to really just get it into the classroom, which is it's a challenge to do, to get education into the K through 12 classroom at all. So you guys are doing amazing
and
work.
we're looking forward to working with Iowa State University too, our own place, and Laura in her new role. So I think Lene has done a phenomenal job. Laura, I can't wait, to do more partnerships with you. And I just think there's so many opportunities.
Yep. Thank you. Are there any other questions from anyone else? Doesn't look like it. We're very close to our 1 hour. So again, thank you both so much. I'm going to drop into the chat really quickly where you can check out upcoming webinars and subscribe to our newsletter. And we'll make sure if you're registered for this webinar, you'll definitely get an email out letting you know when the video is available, once it's closed caption, usually next week sometime. Our next webinar, Pest in Progress webinar, will be Wednesday, July 19th. Again, 12:30 Central Time, and this time we're completely moving over to turf grass. We're going to discuss Poic acid for control of dollar spot on golf course turf grass with Paul Cook. So we will see you guys in a month, and thank you again, Maya and Lynn, and everyone have a great day.
Well, and one last thing, Laura, if the attendees want to do the form, we're happy to connect with them and just even think about what they might like to collaborate with. So
okay. Yes, so attendees, and we'll make sure to get a link to that form emailed out to you if you attended this. So if you didn't get that QR code to work on your phone, so you can have that information. And
did it not work, Laura?
I could get it to work.
You couldn't?
It did work for me. So
okay, thank you. Okay. Oh my gosh.
No, I think it works. I'm just, I'm one of those people. It takes me a while to get that camera going and
I know
everything.
I'm starting to like those more and more.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Yep. Thanks everyone.